Hello everyone, it's Leo, and since TWINKLE PRECURE is almost over, I wanted to come here and talk about something that made this season even more special than it was before. And I think it's hard to sum it up in some words, but if I had to, I would say it comes down to creation of the universe, imagination, and gods. And so I want to talk about those things in this video. So if you haven't been watching Star Twinkle and you care about spoilers, you don't want to be spoiled, this video is not for you because it's going to cover some parts and some things that happened in the latest episodes, in the last few episodes of Star Twinkle. And I think that one of the things I'm going to talk a lot about here is religion, God, and humanity. And so if those topics are sensitive to you, if you don't want to talk about them, if you don't like discussing those things, I think this video is not for you either. But if you like those topics and if you want a discussion, come with me. I haven't really planned this video. I'm just gonna sit here and talk about some things I feel that are very nice about the whole creation of the universe in Star Twinkle and the way humans are thought of. And I'm not gonna edit this video, I'm gonna cut anything out, so I'm sorry if I stutter. I stutter a lot. I miss some words and some letters. Sometimes I mix them up. It happens a lot, so I am saying sorry already because I know it's going to happen. But anyways, I think that one of the things that made Star Twinkle very, very interesting was the creation of the universe. And it raised lots of questions to me when I was watching it. And I've read some comments here on my channel as well about this, which were pretty interesting, that I'm going to talk about a little later on. But basically, what happened was that the princesses created the universe. The 13 princesses, the 12 princesses that we know, and the Ophiuchus princess, which is basically the villain of this season. They created the universe together. They used their powers to create the universe. And Star Twinkle never referred to them as gods. They always call them princesses, never gods. But one thing that always happens in humanity is using gods to explain the creation of the universe. So it happens in lots of different religions and lots of different beliefs. So gods are always or almost always the creators of the universe in myths, religions, legends, and things like that. And so I'm not here questioning or anything like that. I'm just saying that gods have been used to explain the creation of the universe. So I think that it's fair for us to call the princesses the gods of the Star Twinkle world, since they were the ones that basically created this world. And I remember that Metamorphosis, a person that is always commenting here on my videos, thank you Metamorphosis so much for all your comments. You always bring some pretty interesting points and pretty interesting theories. Metamorphosis asked in one of the comments, the princesses created the universe, but where do they come from? And so I started thinking, and I instantly remembered something from my childhood. When I was growing up, I come from, my mother is a very religious person. She's very, very Catholic. And so I went to church a lot with her when I was a kid. I was part of the Catholic Church. I grew up in the church. And so I had the beliefs. I used to know a lot of things. I eventually forget some of them. My memory is horrible. But I grew up in the church, and I remember that I was a very curious kid. I consider myself to be a curious person. But when I was a kid, I was very curious, and I used to ask lots of questions. I think kids do that in general, right? Kids ask lots of questions. And so I remembered, I asked my mom, where do gods come from? And one of the things, I remember this story clearly in my mind. She told me this story only once, but it stayed with me, and it stays with me until today. I still picture the story in my mind. She told me that there was a kid in a beach playing, and the kid created a hole in the sand, and the kid was trying to put the sea inside that hole. It had something that it tried to put water in that hole. And so the kid saw a priest walking in the sand, in the beach, and the kid asked the priest, "Hey priest, I have always wondered, where do God come from?" And the priest looked at the kid and said, "Kid, it's easier for you to put all of this ocean inside this hole than for you to understand the mysteries of God." I never forgot this story. And like when I was a kid, I was like, wow, I am never gonna understand the mysteries of God. And I was very shocked with that. You know, that for me was like the biggest and the best story ever. I loved it. And then in church, I remember that lots of people had the same questions, the same doubts as I did about where did God came from. I remember that story for me was enough. I did not need any other story. But I do remember seeing lots of people asking about where God came from. And I remember that there was another answer about that, which was God is so powerful that he basically created himself. And that was also a story that lived with me for a while, and I really believed in it. Like, okay, now I can explain it in a better way, in a more palpable way. God created himself because he's so powerful and he simply created himself. And so I was shocked with that story. But what I just want to say here is that sometimes in some religions we see that God has an appearing story, like God comes from somewhere. But at least in the Catholic Church, in Christianity, it doesn't seem that there is a clear explanation to where God comes from. And so it's kind of easy to understand why they didn't create a story explaining where the princesses and Ophiuchus princess come from. Because they're basically gods. So if they created the universe, where do they come from? Does it matter? Like, is this something that is relevant to the whole situation? I don't know. I just think that it's an interesting thing when we're talking about gods and such. And going back to Star Twinkle, the princesses and the Ophiuchus princess, they had a big difference in idea, which was the Ophiuchus princess wanted to create a humanity, or basically she wanted to create a universe without imagination. And the 12 princesses wanted to create a universe with imagination. And so they gave us and the aliens imagination. But basically, I think that Star Twinkle being a show for kids, we need strong and powerful words, and words that will resonate with the kid that is watching. Imagination is a very good word for that, especially because it's also tied to the main character, who is very imaginative. Hikaru is like the craziest child in the world, but you cannot take away her imagination, no matter what you do. Well, you just seen in episode 48, the imagination in the universe was destroyed, but it was still there with Hikaru and the other girls. It was still there with them. You cannot take imagination away from her. But I think that basically what imagination really means if we were to transport the Star Twinkle world to our world, if we were to reflect it, it basically means free will. In the Ophiuchus world, people wouldn't have free will. We wouldn't be able to think, rationalize things, and decide things for ourselves. We would just have to follow instincts. We would just be simple animals living and surviving and dying, and the cycle of life would be just that. But we as humans, we have imagination, and so we have free will. We are able to think, rationalize, decide what we're going to do, and basically we have to pay for things that we do. Like it depends on what you believe or what you don't believe. But if you believe like in heaven or hell, if you believe in karma, if you don't believe in anything, but even if you don't believe in anything, there are laws that we have to abide to. But the thing is, I feel like this whole talk about imagination was talked a lot during the course of Star Twinkle. People debated whether Star Twinkle was dealing nicely with the imagination theme or not. And I think that the general consensus was that the imagination theme wasn't being used to its fullest. And now that we know what imagination actually stands for, which isn't actually imagination in the sense of the word, but more of a free will, if we look at the season, like if we watch the season again with those lenses, we are going to see that there is a lot about that in the course of the whole season. And like, you decide what you do, you decide your fate, like especially with Maruka's story. You decide what you do. You are the owner of your destiny. And so this means that the 12 princesses, in the end, the show, I think that the show stood by the 12 princesses side. And basically the philosophy is, if humans need free will, humans need imagination, and this is the right path. A path without imagination, a world without imagination isn't a good world. And well, if you remember what Lala told the Ophiuchus princess in episode 48, she basically said something like that. Because with imagination, you have people that think differently, that act differently, that have different perspectives in life, that have different ways of dealing with things. And so we have diversity. We have people that are different, and different in the Star Twinkle universe, and in how Star Twinkle sees things is beautiful. The diversity in Star Twinkle, and not only in Star Twinkle, in Precure in general, is beautiful. And so I think that the show is trying to make a point that the princesses, the 12 princesses, were right in how they wanted to create the world. Until we get to another point. Is Ophiuchus a real villain, or was she just standing by her own point and doing the things she wants to do? Well, I think that this is another question, because this is another interesting thing and an interesting topic, because if you look at the history of humanity, you see that free will has caused lots of problems, and it has caused like lots of suffering and lots of, you name it, wars and hunger and prejudice, hate, crimes, and everything. So there's a lot in the world that that makes it clear that free will has caused problems for humanity, and humans are a problem to the world. And sometimes I wonder, if we weren't here on Earth, how would life on Earth be nowadays? How different would it be? How would nature would be nowadays? How would things be? And so, like, it's hard to imagine. I know that there are some scientists that even talk like, if we disappeared today, how would things be like 10, 100, 1,000 years from now on? How would things be? And so I like listening, I like hearing, I like reading things like that. But it's like, Ophiuchus' side is also understandable. If we think like that, if we think the problems humans caused in the world, I do understand her side. But ultimately, I would stay on the princess's side, because life is like, I think there are so many problems. My life isn't that easy. I mean, I have lots of problems. I struggle with lots of things in life, but ultimately I think that life is beautiful, and I like being alive. I like having freedom. Even though freedom is a concept, it doesn't really stands for in our society. Like, we are trapped in so many different ways, but I believe that freedom is, at least from what we can achieve from freedom, it's a great thing. And being alive, being able to choose, being able to decide what you want to do with your life, even though I also believe that decisions are not always something that is done. Like, we don't have the power to decide most things in our lives. But still, this illusion of freedom is something very nice. And, I like being alive. There are so many things we can do to enjoy life, and I like being alive. So I would stand on the 12 princesses side. But I also understand Ophiuchus' side, and I also think that she wouldn't be categorized like directly as a villain. I don't know. I think I wouldn't categorize her as a villain simply because she has another take on life. You know, she has another take on how we should live our lives, and being that she is not human and she is out of this concept of right and wrong. I don't know, but at the end of the day, Hikaru was able to change Ofyuku's mind because I think, as I said, Star Twinkle was trying to make a point with it, and Hikaru was able to do that. I think I said too much. I had some things I wanted to say, but I don't think they fit. But anyways, this is a point about Star Twinkle that is really nice. The whole idea of imagination, the whole idea of free will in the creation of the universe, and you know, being able to choose for yourself and being able to participate in something bigger and having your own decisions is something nice. And I feel like this is one of the things that makes Star Twinkle such a special season. This season had it all, and I can't say how much I love it and how special I feel it's being. That's all I wanted to say. Please talk to me in the comments, and sorry for this long video. I think there was a lot to talk about this. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye bye!